waiting in my In the sixth episode of my tutorial Java development series, I'll be teaching you about if, else if, and else statements. So open at means IDE. And press File, New Project, Java Application, Next. We're calling this if, else, if, else statements. Finish. And what I'll do first is I'll define a variable and I'll call it x to keep it simple. And what I've done is, I've explained in previous videos, but I'll explain it quickly again. What I've done is I've told the compiler that the variable called x is an integer. And a way to define the value of x in one line can be done like this, to set the value of x to equal 1. And so basically what I've done is instead of writing another line saying that x equals 1, while I initialize x, I also define the value of x. Now what I'll do is I'll write an if statement. If, parentheses, x, then use two equals to signs. There's a difference between saying an equals to sign and two equals to sign, and let me explain in a second. Basically what an equals to sign is what it does is it says that the value of x is now 1. What two equal signs means is it's saying is x equal to 1. And there's an if before, meaning if x is equal to 1, then write parentheses, the brackets, and then you tell the program to write this line of code. And if statements are really useful for many languages and many programs. Like if statements is used in almost every single program, as it is one of the most used commands in programming. So what I'll do is if x equals 1, I'll say system.out.println is, and I'll write some string. Instead of defining a variable, defining a string variable, and then putting that into my print statement, I'll just write my string directly into my system.out.print method. So what I'll say is system.out.println the value of x, my bad, is equal to 1, and then semicolon. And if I run the application, let's bring it down here, so you can see the code while it's run, it says the value of x is equal to 1, because I defined the value of x is equal to 1, and then I said if x equals 1, or if x is 1, then do this. And since x is 1, it did that line of code. Next, what I'll do is I'll make x equals 2, and then I'll run the code. As you can see here, nothing was outputted because x equals 2, which does not equal 1, therefore do not trigger the if statement. So what the next statement I'll teach you is called an else statement. And basically what an else is if the if statement was not triggered, then run this line of code. System.out.println the value of x is not 1. And if I run the program now, as you can see here, select output. As you can see here, it will say the value of x is not 1 because of the fact that x is equal to 2. And since x equals 2, therefore, when it runs the if statement, if x equals 1, will be false. It won't run this line of code. However, it will now go to the else statement, meaning because this line of code was not triggered, this if statement was not triggered, then run this else statement, which basically says the value of x is not 1. The value of x is not 1. Now, there's another method that is another statement that is involved in if else is called an else if. And basically, what you write in else if is this is how you declare an else if. I don't know why my else statement went back, but for some reason. So else if x equals 2, then run this line of code. System.out.println print ln the value of x is equal to 2. And basically what I've done now is I've said that if x equals 2, then run this line of code. So if I run the program now, it says the value of x is equal to 2. Because what happens is, initially x equals 2. If x equals 1, then run this line of code. However, x is not equal to 1. So we'll not run that line of code. Then it'll say else if x equals 2, then run this line of code. Since x equals 2, it will run it. And then it'll say else, meaning if none of these else or else if statements were triggered, then run this line of code. So this is like the last resort. If none of the lines of codes were not fulfilled, then finally at least do this. Also, an else if, the difference between if and else if is saying that if this statement was not triggered, then only check for this statement. However, if this statement was checked, then what happens is it won't even run this comparator, this else if statement, and it won't even run the else statement, and it'll continue on the code. And that's what else if is. Instead of writing two ifs, you can write an else if.